I'm Lauren Pierce. 33 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the one everyone could count on, but rarely remembered. My sister Vanessa was the sparkle of the family, the one whose stories made our parents beam, and whose charm filled every room. I was the steady one, the background harmony to her solo, but I kept showing up, hoping one day they'd notice the difference between being dependable and being invisible. On the night of my father's 65th birthday, I walked into a private dining room I'd paid to reserve, holding a small gift and a heart full of cautious hope. By the time the evening was over, I'd finally understand that sometimes the only way to be seen is to stop standing in the shadows. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever done everything right and still been treated like you didn't belong. I grew up in a modest brick house outside Columbus, Ohio, where everything ran on routine. My dad worked long hours at an engineering firm. My mom taught piano lessons in the living room to pay for our school trips. We weren't wealthy, but we were proud of working for what we had. From the time I could tie my shoes, I was the helper, the one who remembered birthdays, packed lunches, and patched small disasters before anyone else noticed. When Vanessa forgot her homework, I slipped mine into her folder. When she dented Mom's car at 16, I took the blame because Dad was softer with me. It felt like my role was to smooth the edges to make life easier for everyone else. Our parents never meant to play favorites, or at least that's what I used to tell myself. But even as a child, I could see it in the way their faces lit up for her. Vanessa could walk into a room late and still be greeted like she brought the sunshine with her. I was punctual, polite, reliable, and quiet, which made me easy to overlook. When we both graduated college, Dad framed her diploma and forgot mine in the envelope. Mom said, "We'll get to it," but the frame never appeared. I learned to tuck small hurts into invisible drawers and to keep smiling because asking for attention always felt like begging. After college, I moved 3 states away to Indianapolis, built a small marketing firm from scratch, and created a life that felt solid quiet, maybe but my own. I called home on Sundays, sent Christmas cards, and wired money whenever my parents hit a rough patch. When Dad's transmission went out last year, I covered it without hesitation. It wasn't about money, it was about being useful because usefulness was the only kind of love I'd ever been guaranteed. I told myself that being dependable was my strength even when it became a chain. So when Mom called 2 weeks before Dad's 65th birthday, her voice syrup-sweet, I didn't think twice. "Lauren, sweetheart," she said, "we'd love for you to come to dinner. It's going to be special." I smiled through the phone, already knowing what was coming next. "It's at that place your father loves Rose Ember. Could you put down the deposit? Just to hold the reservation." Of course I could. Of course I did. By that afternoon, I'd wired the $1,000 deposit and asked who else was coming. "Just family," Mom said. That phrase used to mean safety, warmth, belonging. Lately, it just meant obligation. Still, I bought a new dress and a bottle of Cabernet, the kind Dad liked, but never bought for himself. I told myself this time would be different, that maybe after everything I'd done quietly for years, I'd finally feel like more than the extra chair at the end of the table. The night of the dinner, Rose Ember shimmered with low lights and soft jazz, the kind of place where every sound felt like it had been polished. I arrived early as usual, my heels clicking against the marble floor, while the hostess led me upstairs to the private room. I could already hear laughter spilling out before the door opened. Vanessa's voice floated above the others, light, confident, practiced. The room glowed with chandeliers and champagne. My father looked 10 years younger as he laughed with our cousins. For a moment I stood in the doorway unnoticed, holding my gift box wrapped in navy paper. My name on the reservation, and an ache in my chest I couldn't quite name. When I finally stepped forward, I saw 15 seats around a long mahogany table, each one claimed. Next to the wall, near a bus cart stacked with dishes, stood a single fold-out chair. Vanessa turned her cream dress catching the light and smiled as if she'd rehearsed it. "Lauren, glad you made it." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes flicked toward the corner. "Sorry, this table's for family only, but we set you up just over there." The sound of silverware clinking died for a heartbeat. Someone chuckled under their breath. My mother waved, faintly avoiding my eyes. My body moved before my thoughts caught up. I sat down, coat still on, beside the faint scent of lemon peels and shrimp shells. The laughter resumed as if nothing had happened. For the next 2 hours, they toasted, posed for photos, and told stories about trips I'd never been invited on. I kept a polite smile fixed on my face, the kind you learn to wear when leaving would hurt more than staying. At one point, Vanessa stood to give a speech. My mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Dad beamed as she handed him a framed photo from an old family vacation one where I hadn't been there. It was almost funny, the perfection of the omission. The waiter never brought me a menu, and no one asked if I wanted to order. I sat in silence, the only sound my own heartbeat steady and contained. What I didn't know then, as I watched the candles flicker across their smiling faces, was that the quietest person in the room was about to change everything. Because before the night ended, someone would hand the check to me, and my answer would finally rewrite the story I'd been living my entire life. The waiter's hand trembled slightly as he held the black folder, glancing from the receipt to the crowd at the table. The laughter quieted, replaced by the soft hum of the restaurant's jazz drifting through the air. I could see the number reflected in the glossy paper, the total sitting there like a dare. He hesitated, then turned toward me, polite but uncertain. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said carefully. "Should I run the final charge on the same card used for the deposit?" For a moment, no one breathed. My father looked up, fork halfway to his mouth. Vanessa froze. Her wineglass tilted mid-air. My mother's smile stiffened, the kind that stretches too far when she's nervous. I could feel 15 pairs of eyes waiting, expecting me to nod, to say the words I'd said all my life. "Sure, I'll take care of it." But something inside me stayed still. I looked at the waiter and smiled. "Not my table," I said. The words seemed to slice through the room, quiet but final. The waiter blinked, unsure whether he'd heard me right. "I'm sorry," he asked softly. I kept my voice calm. "I paid the deposit." I said, my tone even, but I was told this table was for family only. Someone gasped. "It might have been Aunt Julie." Vanessa's face went red, a sharp wine-stained blush. "Lauren, don't do this," she hissed under her breath. "I'm not doing anything," I said quietly. "Just keeping to the seating arrangement." My father cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. "Honey?" He started forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Come on. You already paid half. Might as well just settle it." That was the moment it clicked, the unspoken rule that had defined my life. Might as well. It was how every favor began and ended. Might as well drive 3 hours for Thanksgiving because Vanessa's busy. Might as well pay for the repairs because Dad's retired now. Might as well smile through it because it keeps the peace. I stood up slowly, the legs of my chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the quiet room like a blade. "You're right, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I did pay the deposit. I booked this place, ordered the flowers, handled the details. And for that, I got a folding chair by the trash." My gaze swept across the table. "So now you can figure out the rest." No one moved. Vanessa stared at me, her mouth open, too shocked to speak. My mother dropped her napkin and bent to pick it up just to avoid my eyes. I took a breath, straightened my coat, and walked out. My heels clicked against the marble floor, each step sounding louder than the last. The waiter stood frozen behind me, folder still in hand. Outside, the cold air hit like a truth I should have seen coming years ago. The February wind bit at my skin as I walked down the front steps past the glow of the restaurant windows. My hands trembled when I unclasped my earrings, not from fear but from something cleaner, sharper, release. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone buzzed nonstop. Mom first. "Lauren, please call me. We need to talk." Then Vanessa. "You just had to make it about you, didn't you?" And finally Dad. "That was uncalled for. You embarrassed everyone." I placed the phone face down on the counter and let the silence settle. 10 minutes later it buzzed again, but this time it was a name I hadn't expected to see: Madison Hart. Vanessa's ex-girlfriend. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, Madison," I said carefully. Her voice was soft, unsure. "Lauren, I hope it's okay I called. I was at the dinner." "What, you were there?" "I came with Claire," she said, giving a small, awkward laugh. "Vanessa told everyone I was a friend from yoga." I leaned against the counter, rubbing the edge of the gift box, still unopened, in my purse. "What happened after I left?" "She panicked," Madison said simply. Tried to act like it was a misunderstanding. Blamed the waiter, blamed you, but everyone saw what really happened. I didn't say anything. She's been cruel to you for years, Madison continued softly. You've always been the one holding things together, and they treat you like you're just there to clean up the mess. Tonight they saw it. All of them did. I closed my eyes for a moment. Why tell me this now? Because you walked out, she said, and they didn't expect you to. After we hung up, I stood there staring at the unopened bottle of wine on the counter, the same one I'd brought for Dad, hoping it might start a new memory. I realized it wouldn't have mattered what I'd brought. They never saw what I offered. They only noticed what they could take. The next morning, my family group chat was alive like it hadn't been in months. Mom wrote first, "You hurt your father. Please call." Dad followed, "Let's not make this bigger than it is. Just apologize and we'll move on." Then Vanessa, "You humiliated me in front of everyone. I hope it was worth it." I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I was clear. For once, I didn't feel the need to smooth anything over. But by afternoon, Vanessa wasn't done. A voice message came through her tone, clipped and bitter. "I hope you're happy," she said. "You made Dad's birthday all about you. You always play the victim. Maybe if you weren't so cold, people would actually want you at the table." That was when something inside me shifted, not with rage, but precision. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and searched for the restaurant email thread. I pulled up every receipt, the deposit confirmation, the florist invoice, the digital receipt for the framed golf print I'd ordered for Dad, even the driver service for Mom, because she didn't want to deal with parking downtown. Then I began to type. Subject last night. Hi all, since there seems to be confusion about my intentions, I thought it might help to clarify with facts. Attached are receipts for the dinner deposit, $1,000 floral arrangements, $350, Dad's gift, $180, and the town car service for Mom, $120. All of this was handled on my card. No one offered to reimburse, nor did I ask. I did it because I was told this dinner was about honoring Dad. But I was also told quite clearly that I wasn't considered part of the family that night. I won't be covering the remaining $4,900. I didn't eat, I wasn't seated, I wasn't welcome. And I'm tired of paying for rooms that won't even offer me a chair. Best Lauren. When I hit send, it felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. The replies came quickly. First was my cousin, Jenna Good for you. We saw what happened. It was cruel. Then Uncle Ray wish I'd had the guts to speak up. I'm sorry. Even Aunt Julie sent a quiet message. About time someone said it. The only silence came from my parents and Vanessa. Hours later, a new text appeared from an unfamiliar number. Hi, this is Claire Madison's friend. We met once at a wedding. Just wanted to say your email's making the rounds. People are talking and they're not on Vanessa's side this time. I set the phone down and let the words sink in. For years, I'd poured into people who only reached for me when they needed something. Now, without raising my voice, the balance was shifting. That night, I opened my banking app. There it was, the shared emergency fund I'd quietly maintained for 4 years. Nearly $30,000 used mostly for family needs. Vanessa's broken AC, Dad's dental work, Mom's endless just until the refund clears. Every withdrawal came with a promise of gratitude that never arrived. I stared at the balance for a long time, then transferred every dollar into my personal savings and closed the account. It was the sound of a door locking, soft but irreversible. Minutes later, my phone lit up again. Vanessa. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Lauren, what the hell, she snapped. The joint account's gone. I just tried to pay my car note. I closed it, I said. You what? You can't just, I can, I said quietly. And I did. The line went still. I paid for dinner, the flowers, Mom's ride. I continued. I sat alone and got laughed at, and then I was expected to foot the bill while being told I wasn't family. That account was the last tie. Now it's gone. You're being vindictive, she said, her voice rising. No, I replied. I'm being done. For the first time in my life, Vanessa had no comeback. When she finally spoke again, her voice cracked not with apology, but disbelief. You've never talked to me like this before. I used to think I had to earn love by staying quiet. I said. But love that only exists when I'm convenient isn't love at all. Then I hung up. I opened my notes app and started a list of everything I'd stopped doing, covering bills, driving home for holidays, just to be ignored, sending birthday gifts that went unacknowledged. It was a long list, and for once, I didn't feel guilty. As I closed my laptop that night, the apartment felt lighter. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. The days after that email felt different. The constant tension that used to hum in the background of my life had gone quiet. No calls, no sudden emergencies, no guilt-laced messages demanding help. My apartment was finally still, and for the first time, silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. I spent that weekend catching up on things I'd put off for months, laundry, grocery runs, small pieces of normal life I'd forgotten how to enjoy. Every so often, my phone would light up with a text from a relative, someone offering quiet support. Jenna sent a photo of her morning coffee with a simple line, "Good for you. You did what none of us could." Uncle Ray followed with a short message. "Your father needed to hear that, even if he won't admit it yet." But from my parents, nothing. And from Vanessa, only silence that felt sharp enough to cut. I didn't expect an apology, but the quiet told me she was stewing. By Tuesday afternoon, it arrived. Her name flashed across my screen again this time, not a call, but a long message. "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone." Dad's furious. "Mom won't stop crying. I hope you're satisfied." I read it twice before locking the screen. There was nothing left to say. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, sorting through bank statements and closing old auto payments that led back to family expenses. Every transfer carried a memory. Vanessa's electric bill from 2 winters ago when her bonus came late. Dad's medication refill I covered last spring. The rental deposit for Mom's vacation cottage she never paid back. I realized that I had built an invisible system to keep everyone else comfortable, one that only worked because I never asked for acknowledgement. I deleted every linked payment and exhaled my hands, trembling slightly when the final confirmation appeared. It was strange how something as simple as clicking remove could feel like reclaiming a piece of yourself. The next morning, my phone rang again. It was Madison. Her voice sounded lighter than before, almost careful. "Hey, I didn't mean to bother you," she said. "I just wanted to check in." I leaned against the counter, coffee mug in hand. "You're not bothering me," I said. "How's everything on your end?" "She's not taking it well," Madison admitted. "Vanessa's been calling around trying to control the story, but most of the family already saw your email. They know the truth. I didn't respond right away." Madison went on softly. "You did the right thing, Lauren. She's been walking over you for years. You just finally stopped laying down the carpet." Her words hung in the air. "I guess I did," I said quietly. "Anyway," she added with a gentle laugh, "I just wanted to say I admire you for it. People notice more than you think." When we hung up, I stood there for a long time, letting her words sink in. People notice. I'd spent so long believing invisibility was permanent that I forgot it could also be a choice. Later that week, I found myself sitting at a cafe near my office, watching the snow fall against the window. My work inbox had been quiet, my schedule clear, yet I felt something shifting under the stillness. It wasn't peace exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it. By Thursday, the silence broke. A single new email appeared in my inbox, the sender's name stopping me cold. "Daniel Pierce." The subject line was short, "I owe you an apology." For a minute, I couldn't open it. I just stared at the screen, unsure if I was ready to see what was inside. Finally, I clicked. "Lauren." I didn't see it. "That's on me. Your sister has always taken up all the air in the room. You made it easy for us to ignore that. I'm sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen. No excuses. Dad." I read it twice before I set my phone down. It wasn't long and it wasn't flowery, but it was real. For once, he didn't try to defend her or minimize what had happened. He just said the one thing I'd been waiting my whole life to hear, "I'm sorry." I didn't cry. I didn't reply either. I just let the moment sit where it belonged, between past and possibility. That weekend, I went for a long walk through my neighborhood, snow crunching beneath my boots. Every block felt like a small release, a breath I hadn't taken in years. I stopped by a small bookstore on the corner and bought a journal, something simple with a dark green cover. That night, I wrote one line at the top of the first page, "What I owe myself." The next few weeks passed quietly. The family group chat, once full of chain messages and birthday reminders, went completely silent. I didn't mind. My days found new rhythms, morning runs, long baths, weekends spent without checking my phone. When I finally returned to work after taking a short break, my assistant Mel looked at me as I walked into the office. "You look different," she said. "Maybe I am," I replied. I wasn't sure what she saw, but I felt lighter. I started arriving early again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The office, once just a place to escape, the noise began to feel like mine again. At night, I cooked for one roasted vegetable soup simmering on the stove, jazz humming through the apartment. I stopped scrolling through family updates and started filling that silence with my own company. Therapy came next, not out of desperation, but out of readiness. My therapist, Dr. Helen Rowe, was in her 50s, calm and straightforward. On our first session, she asked me what brought me in. "I guess I got tired of pretending I wasn't hurt," I said. She nodded. "That's a good place to start." We talked about boundaries and silence, how both can protect and isolate you. She helped me see how I'd been trained to interpret peace as absence, not presence. Week by week, I learned what it meant to build a life that didn't orbit around anyone else's comfort. One morning I woke up early and booked a flight I'd canceled twice before a trip to Santa Fe. I'd postponed it years ago for another family event that left me drained and invisible. Now there was no one to stop me. The trip felt like breathing new air. I walked through art markets under warm sunlight, listened to street musicians, and drank coffee while watching the city wake up. I carried a small notebook wherever I went, jotting down thoughts that came unfiltered. On the third day, I wrote, "Saying no is not rejection, it's self-respect." By the time I boarded the plane home, I realized that I wasn't just getting away from something. I was stepping toward something new, something that had my name on it. When I landed back in Indianapolis, my phone was full of work messages, but none from my family. I didn't mind. The quiet had become a friend. That evening, while unpacking, I found the green journal again. Inside, I added one last line: "I don't need to be invited to the table if I can build my own." I set it on my nightstand, feeling the smallest flicker of peace, the kind that doesn't demand attention, but fills the room all the same. And somewhere in that calm, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the start of learning what love looks like when it's chosen, not owed. When I came home from Santa Fe, the apartment felt warmer somehow. The same walls, the same light through the kitchen blinds, yet everything inside me had shifted. I unpacked slowly, folding linen shirts that smelled faintly of desert air. The quiet no longer pressed on my chest. It filled the room like something earned. That trip had been more than a break. It was proof that I could exist outside the script my family wrote for me and still be whole. Dr. Rowe noticed it the following week. "You're softer around the edges," she said, as I settled into the chair across from her. "Not smaller, just less tense." I smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "I think I finally stopped waiting for permission." She nodded, jotting something in her notebook. "Good. Keep listening to that feeling. It's usually where the healing begins." Most nights after work, I took long walks through the neighborhood, breathing in the faint scent of wood smoke from nearby chimneys. I'd come home, light a candle, and write in my green journal simple sentences about things that used to feel impossible. Saying no without apology. Leaving messages unanswered without guilt. Sleeping without that heaviness that comes from being needed by everyone except yourself. One morning, while sorting through old paperwork, I came across a photo buried in a drawer. It was from a family trip years ago. Vanessa front and center, Mom and Dad smiling behind her, and me half out of frame, blurry, like an afterthought. I turned it over and read the note Mom had written on the back, "Our perfect summer." For a moment, I almost laughed. Then, I slipped it into an envelope labeled "Past" and tucked it away. That afternoon, an unexpected call broke the calm. The screen flashed with a number I hadn't seen in weeks. Dad. I hesitated, then answered. "Hey, sweetheart," he said. His voice sounded older, quieter. "How are you?" I told him I was fine, that work had been busy. There was a pause, the kind filled with words we didn't yet know how to use. "Listen," he began. "I meant what I wrote. I didn't see it. I should have. Your mother's been reading that email every night. I leaned against the counter, unsure what to say. She didn't reach out, I said softly. She's trying to figure out how he admitted. She's never been good at saying she's wrong. We talked for a few minutes more about the weather, about his garden, about nothing important, but for the first time he didn't ask for help or advice. He just wanted to hear my voice. When we hung up, I sat for a while, letting that small change settle inside me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was movement. Over the next week, I threw myself into work. My firm had landed a new client, a local arts nonprofit, and I spent late evenings polishing presentations. My assistant Mel teased me one morning. "You're glowing lately," she said, handing me coffee. "Did someone finally start treating you right?" I laughed. "Yeah," I said, "me." Friday evening, as I left the office, the city lights shimmered against the damp pavement. I walked past a wine bar and paused at the window. Inside, people sat in pairs and small groups leaning close in conversation. A time would have been when I'd felt the ache of being alone. Now I saw peace in it. I could choose my company, and silence counted. Saturday morning brought another surprise, an email from Madison Hart. "Hi, Lauren, I hope this isn't strange, but I wanted to share something. Vanessa reached out to me last night. She's unraveling a bit, keeps saying everyone turned against her. I told her maybe she should look at what she's done. I don't know if she will, but I thought you should know she's thinking about you. Take care of yourself." I read the message twice, not out of satisfaction but disbelief. For years, I'd been the one spinning after her storms. Now she was facing the silence she'd created. I typed back a short note. "Thank you for letting me know. I hope she finds her own peace someday." That afternoon, I met Jenna for coffee downtown. She slid into the booth with a bright scarf and that easy smile she always carried. "You look good," she said, stirring her drink. "Word around the family is, you broke the unspoken rule, don't stand up to Vanessa." "Guess I missed the memo," I said, half smiling. "She needed it," Jenna replied. "We all saw how they treated you. You just finally said what everyone else was too scared to." Her words hit deeper than she realized. For so long, I'd believed I was the problem, the quiet one, the outsider. But sitting there across from Jenna, I felt something unfamiliar: validation without conditions. That evening, I received another message, this time from Dad again. "Your mother wrote you a letter. She doesn't know if she should send it. I told her she should. If it shows up, just read it when you're ready." I closed my laptop and watched the sunset from my living room window, soft light spilling across the floor. I didn't know what the letter would say, but I knew it wouldn't undo the past. Still, I felt ready to face whatever it carried. In therapy the next week, Dr. Rowe asked how I felt about possible reconciliation. I thought for a long time before answering. "I don't want a reunion," I said. "I want recognition." She smiled faintly. "That's an important difference." We talked about what that might look like, how recognition doesn't always come wrapped in apologies. Sometimes it's as simple as someone admitting they were wrong without expecting absolution. Later that night, I cooked dinner: lemon, chicken, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine beside the stove. I ate slowly, not out of sadness, but appreciation. Every bite reminded me how far I'd come from the woman who once waited by her phone for crumbs of approval. Before bed, I opened my journal again and wrote, "I don't need their silence to end for me to find peace. I just need to stop measuring my worth by the sound of their voices." A few days later, I stopped by the mailbox on my way home from work. Among bills and flyers there, it was a plain white envelope with my mother's handwriting. I held it for a long moment before sliding it into my purse. I didn't open it that night. I let it sit on my desk, the weight of years folded neatly inside. Something told me that whatever was written in that letter would not change my direction. It would only mark how far I'd already walked. The letter sat untouched on my desk for 2 days. I'd move it from one corner to another while working, sometimes turning it over just to look at the handwriting. The loops were familiar, soft, careful, the kind my mother used when she was trying to make something feel pretty. Each night I told myself I'd open it, and each night I left it sealed. On the third evening, after a long day of client meetings and a cold walk home, I finally did. The paper crackled as I unfolded it, the ink slightly smudged, where her pen must have paused. "Lauren, I've reread your email at least 5 times. I didn't know how far we had pushed you or how silent you'd become just to stay close. I was wrong. If you never want to come back, I understand. But if you ever do, I promise not to seat you by the trash. Love, Mom. The note was short. No excuses. No justifications. For the first time, she didn't try to soften it with explanations. I folded it carefully and placed it inside my journal, not out of sentiment, but acknowledgement. It was the first real thing she'd ever given me truth without a but. The following week, life returned to its quiet rhythm. Work kept me busy, and evenings were my own. Sometimes I'd walk to the park after dinner, watching the city lights shimmer across the pond. It was early spring, the air still sharp, but full of promise. I'd see families pushing strollers, couples walking dogs, laughter echoing down the paths. I didn't feel envious anymore. I just watched, content to exist in my own lane. Dr. Rowe noticed the change immediately during our next session. That letter, she said, how did it feel to read it? Strange. I admitted. It didn't undo anything, but it felt lighter, like a door finally cracked open. She nodded thoughtfully. Closure isn't about the apology itself, she said. It's about knowing you can live well whether you receive it or not. That evening I thought about her words as I cooked. The apartment smelled like garlic and rosemary. I poured a glass of wine, leaned against the counter, and let the quiet fill the space. This was the kind of peace I'd always imagined, but never thought I'd earn. A few days later, a photo appeared on my social feed, one I hadn't expected. A cousin had posted pictures from Dad's birthday dinner the same night everything happened. The table looked elegant, the chandeliers glowing above smiling faces. But in the corner of the frame, blurred and half-hidden, was me still wearing my coat, sitting beside the trash cart. The caption read, "Family love at its best." I stared at the image for a long moment. It didn't sting the way I thought it might. Instead, it felt like proof evidence of a woman who kept showing up even when she was never meant to belong there. I saved the picture to my phone, not to relive it, but to remember what I'd left behind. That weekend, I decided to host a dinner of my own. Nothing big, just a small gathering of people who'd stood by me through the quiet unraveling. Jenna came early carrying a bottle of white wine and tulips. Mel brought a dessert she'd made herself. Madison arrived later with Claire, both smiling as they stepped through the door. We set the table together, mismatched dishes and old linen napkins, laughter filling the kitchen. When the food was ready, we crowded around the table, 6 of us in total. No seating charts, no hierarchy, just warmth. As we passed dishes and traded stories, I realized how easy it felt. There was no weight in the air, no hidden test to pass. At one point, Jenna raised her glass and said, "To Lauren, for reminding us that family isn't about where you're born. It's about who shows up and stays." Everyone clinked glasses and I smiled, feeling something deep inside settle. After they left that night, I stood by the sink washing dishes slowly, while soft music played in the background. The candlelight flickered across the counter, catching on the tulip petals. It struck me that this table, these people, was mine. I didn't have to fight for a seat. I had built it myself. A few days later, I received another text from Dad. "Your mother told me she wrote you. Thank you for reading it. I hope someday we can all sit together again, no expectations." I didn't know if that day would ever come, but the message didn't fill me with dread. For once, his words didn't come with a price. At work, things began to bloom too. The nonprofit project I'd taken on won a small regional award, and my team surprised me with a card and cupcakes. Mel grinned and said, "You're finally getting recognized for all those long nights." I smiled, not because of the award itself, but because I finally believed I deserved it. On a quiet Sunday morning, I opened my journal again. The letter from Mom was tucked between its pages. I reread it once, then wrote beneath it, "I forgive her not to forget, but to free myself from standing in that corner forever." That night, I sat by the window watching rain slide down the glass. My phone buzzed once, a name flashing on the screen, Vanessa. I hesitated, then let it ring. She called again. On the third try, I answered. Her voice was unsteady. "Lauren, I heard you had a dinner. You didn't invite anyone from the family?" "It wasn't that kind of dinner," I said softly. "People are saying you've turned everyone against me." "I haven't turned anyone," I replied. "They just saw what was already there." There was a long pause. "You've changed," she said finally. I had to, I answered. You just never thought I would. She didn't respond. Only her breath came through the line uneven. Then she hung up. I set the phone down and looked around my apartment, the soft glow of the lamp, the empty plates still drying by the sink, the letter folded neatly in the journal. Everything was exactly where it belonged. Outside, the rain eased into a drizzle. I made tea and sat quietly, knowing the storm between us wasn't finished, but no longer controlled me. The next chapter, whatever it held, would start on my terms. The call from Vanessa stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. Her voice had been brittle, unfamiliar, somewhere between anger and disbelief. When I hung up that night, I knew we'd reached a point that couldn't be undone. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was confirmation. The next morning I woke early, poured coffee, and sat by the window as the city came alive. The rain had cleared overnight, leaving the streets slick and reflective. My phone sat face down on the table, quiet for the first time in weeks. It felt strange, almost peaceful to start a day without tension waiting in my inbox. Later at work, Mel peeked into my office. "You've been getting interview requests," she said, "about the nonprofit project and the award." I smiled. That was fast. She shrugged with a grin. Word gets around when someone finally sees your worth. Her words made me pause. For years I'd been doing good work under the radar, quietly making everyone else look polished. Now for the first time people were asking for my perspective, not my help. That afternoon I stepped outside between meetings to take a short walk. The air carried that early spring chill that makes everything smell like renewal. I thought about how much my world had changed since the dinner. It had only been a few months, yet it felt like another lifetime. I wasn't angry anymore, just aware of how small I'd made myself to keep others comfortable and how easy it was to grow once I stopped apologizing for existing. When I got home that night, there was an envelope slipped under my door, no return address. Inside was a printed photo one from my dinner a few weeks earlier. 6 of us around my kitchen table, laughing mid-conversation faces lit by candlelight. On the back, someone had written in neat handwriting, "You built something beautiful. Never forget that." No signature, but I knew it was Madison. I placed the photo on my refrigerator. It stayed there, a quiet reminder of what I'd created from the ruins. A few days later, Dr. Rowe and I talked about Vanessa's call. "She's unraveling," I admitted. "She thinks I turned everyone against her." Dr. Rowe listened carefully. "You didn't turn anyone," she said. "You simply stopped participating in the story she built. When the script changes, the people who benefited from it usually panic." I nodded. She sounded lost. "That's not your burden," Dr. Rowe said gently. "Sometimes people have to sit in the silence they caused." Over the next week, the world seemed to tilt in small but significant ways. My father started texting short messages, updates about his garden, photos of the dog, little fragments of his day. They were awkward at first, but I responded with simple kindness. No lectures, no guarded tone, just a slow rebuilding one sentence at a time. Then came an email from my mother. Not another letter, just a brief note that said, "I hope you're doing well. The house feels emptier without your visits. Your father talks about you every morning over coffee." I reread it twice, unsure what to feel. It wasn't an apology this time, but it carried something else, humility. I wrote back one line, "I'm doing well, Mom. Thank you for saying that." It was enough. The following weekend, I hosted a workshop for small business owners at the community center. It was something I'd been planning quietly for months, a way to share what I'd learned about financial independence and self-worth through entrepreneurship. 20 people showed up, more than I expected. Among them were women who looked like I once did, competent but tired, reliable but unseen. As I spoke about setting boundaries in business, I realized I was really talking about something deeper: boundaries in life. After the session, a woman named Carla came up to me. "You said something that hit me," she said. "That being dependable isn't the same as being valued. I've been carrying that weight for years." Her voice cracked a little, and I understood instantly. "You can put it down," I told her. "It's allowed." That evening, I sat in my car outside the center for a long time before driving home. I thought about the countless times I'd waited for validation from people who could never give it, and how many women were still doing the same. The difference now was that I no longer felt alone in that truth. Monday morning brought another shift. My father called during my commute. "Your mother and I were talking," he began cautiously. "We know things won't be the same, but we'd like to have you over for dinner sometime. Just us. No big gestures." His voice wavered slightly. I took a deep breath. "I'll think about it," I said honestly. "That's all I ask," he replied, sounding relieved. At the office, Mel was setting up the break room for a staff birthday when she looked at me and said, "You seem lighter lately." I laughed. Maybe I finally started believing that peace doesn't mean perfection. That night, I decided to clear out an old closet, the one stacked with boxes from my parents' house. Inside, I found old report cards, family photos, and a childhood drawing of our house with the caption, "My family all together." I stared at it for a long time, tracing the crayon lines where my little self had tried to fit everyone into one picture. I realized something I hadn't before, that I'd been trying to recreate that image my whole life. But families aren't always pictures to fix. Sometimes they're lessons to outgrow. I slipped the drawing into my journal next to my mother's letter. Both belong to the same story, just different chapters. Later that week, as I walked home from work, I passed Rose Ember, the restaurant where it had all begun. The glow from its windows spilled onto the sidewalk, soft and golden. Inside, new faces filled the tables, laughing, celebrating, unaware of the history written in that space. I stopped for a moment, watching the light reflect on the glass. Then I smiled and kept walking. The weight that once pressed on my chest was gone. At home, I made dinner for one simple pasta and salad and poured a glass of wine. As I sat down to eat, I opened my laptop and began outlining a new program for my firm, a mentorship initiative for women in business. I wanted it to be practical but personal, a space where women could learn to protect both their finances and their dignity. When I closed the laptop, I felt something deep and steady, a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to anyone's approval. A few days later, Jenna texted me a photo from a family gathering I hadn't attended. In the picture, my parents sat together looking older but calmer. Vanessa was missing. "She's been keeping her distance," Jenna wrote. "Maybe it's time she learns what that feels like." I didn't reply, but I stared at the photo for a long time. It wasn't triumph. I felt it was clarity. Some stories only heal when you stop trying to edit them. Before bed that night, I lit a candle by the window and wrote one last line in my journal. "Peace isn't the absence of family, it's the presence of boundaries." Outside, the city lights shimmered through the quiet, and I realized that the woman who once sat by the trash can had finally found her place, not at someone else's table, but at her own. The mentorship program launched in early summer. What started as a single workshop had grown faster than I expected. The small meeting room at the community center filled every session, freelancers, mothers, and business owners bringing stories that echoed my own. Each week, I'd stand at the front speaking about contracts and confidence, but the lessons always circled back to something deeper, knowing when to stop apologizing for taking up space. By the third week, I recognized most of their faces. Carla, the woman who'd spoken to me after that first class, began staying late to help pack up chairs and talk. One night she said, "You have no idea how much this has helped me. I finally told my boss I wouldn't work unpaid weekends." Her smile was shy but proud. I grinned back. "That's the point. You start with one no and the rest gets easier." When everyone left, I sat alone in the quiet room for a while looking at the stack of sign-in sheets. My name was at the top of each one, but for the first time I didn't feel the need for recognition. It wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about sharing the light I'd fought to find. A few nights later, I came home to find a voicemail from Dad. "Your mom and I are hosting a small barbecue this weekend," he said. "No big crowd, just family. We'd like to see you if you're comfortable." I played it twice before calling back. "Dad, thank you," I said. "I'll think about it." He didn't press, just answered, "That's fair, sweetheart." Saturday arrived with clear skies and the smell of fresh-cut grass. I almost didn't go. But around noon, I found myself driving toward the house I'd once fled from. My palms were slick on the steering wheel, my chest tight with a mix of nerves and peace. When I pulled into the driveway, Dad was at the grill apron on, smiling in that awkward way he did when he didn't know how to begin. "Hey, kiddo," he said, wiping his hands on a towel. "You look good." "Thanks," I replied, stepping onto the patio. The same flower pots my mother used to fuss over lined the deck. For a second, it felt like stepping into a memory. Mom came out with a plate of vegetables, her movements careful, almost hesitant. "Lauren," she said softly, "I'm so glad you came." We stood there for a moment before she reached out and touched my arm. "I meant what I wrote," she said. "I'm sorry it took me this long to see what we did." I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. She didn't ask for forgiveness, and I didn't offer it. We didn't need to. The air between us had shifted. We ate outside under the shade of the maple tree. The conversation stayed light. Gardening work the neighborhood. There was no talk of Vanessa, not yet, but her absence lingered a quiet ghost between us. When I was getting ready to leave, Dad walked me to the car. "I won't pretend we deserve another chance," he said, his voice steady. "But I'd like to earn one if you'll let me." I looked at him, really looked. The man who once dismissed my feelings now stood with humility instead of authority. "We'll take it one step at a time," I said. He nodded. "That's all I hoped for." As I drove away, I noticed something small but telling. The front porch light was already on, even though it was still daylight. For years, that light had been the symbol of expectation, a signal that I was late, that someone was waiting for me to make things right. Now it felt like something else entirely, a sign of welcome, not demand. The following week, Madison called out of the blue. "I thought you'd want to know," she said carefully. "Vanessa quit her job. Things are rough for her right now." I hesitated. "Is she okay?" "She's embarrassed," Madison admitted. "She told people she's taking time off, but I think she's just trying to disappear for a while." I exhaled slowly. "That sounds like her." "She'll have to face it eventually," Madison said. "But maybe she'll start seeing what the rest of us already did." Maybe I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. That weekend, I ran another session at the community center. This time, I brought my laptop and projected a new slide across the screen, one that read, "Build your own table." The women smiled, murmuring their approval, and I felt a spark of pride. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was growth. After class, Carla came up again, holding her notebook close to her chest. "Would you ever consider mentoring one-on-one?" she asked. "I think I could learn a lot from you." I paused, surprised but moved. "Yes," I said after a moment. "I'd like that." We met every Wednesday after that. Some evenings, she'd vent about her boss or the pressure of starting her own business. Other times, we just talked about life, her son's school project, my new recipe obsession, small pieces of ordinary joy. It felt like watching the best parts of myself reflected back through someone else. Late one evening after a session, I came home to a text from Mom. "Your sister called. She asked for your number." I didn't give it out without asking first. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure of what I wanted. Finally, I typed back, "Thank you for checking. I'm not ready." She replied almost immediately, "I understand." For the first time, she truly did. That night, I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a cup of tea. The air was warm, the window cracked open just enough to let in the hum of the city below. I thought about everything that had changed: the tables I'd sat at, the ones I'd left, and the one I'd built from scratch. I picked up my green journal from the counter and flipped to the last page. Beneath my mother's letter, I wrote a new line: "Justice isn't payback. It's peace without apology." Outside, a breeze carried the faint scent of lilacs from the park across the street. For a moment, I stood there still and quiet, realizing that peace didn't feel like victory. It felt like arrival. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again, this time with an unfamiliar number. I didn't recognize it at first, but the second message made it clear. "Lauren, it's Vanessa." My hand tightened around the phone. I didn't open the next message right away. I just watched the screen glow in the dim light, knowing the past was calling again, and this time I had the choice to answer or not. The message from Vanessa stayed on my screen for a long time. The soft glow from my phone lit the corner of the kitchen, catching the edge of the mug I'd left half full of tea. I didn't open the next message right away. I just stood there remembering every version of her voice, bright and charming when she wanted something sharp and cold when she didn't. This one felt different, hesitant, almost small. When I finally tapped it open, the words were simple. "I don't know how to fix what I broke, but I'd like to try." For a long moment I said nothing. My thumb hovered over the screen, caught between old wounds and the quiet strength I'd fought so hard to build. Then I typed back, "Trying starts with listening. I'm willing to do that." We met the next afternoon at a small cafe near the river. It was quiet sunlight sliding through the blinds in long, warm stripes. Vanessa looked older somehow, tired but softer. She smiled when she saw me, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You look good," she said. "So do you," I replied, even though we both knew it wasn't really true. We sat across from each other, the space between us heavy, but not hostile. For once, she didn't fill it with excuses or charm. She just sighed and said, "I hurt you. I made fun of you because it was easier than admitting I was jealous. You built a life that didn't depend on anyone, and I couldn't handle that." I stared at her for a while before answering. "You didn't just hurt me, Vanessa. You made me invisible." She nodded, eyes wet. "I know. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to say it out loud." We sat in silence, the kind that used to scare me, but now felt necessary. For the first time, her apology didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded human. When she left, she hugged me once awkwardly, like we were learning a new language. Neither of us spoke fluently. That night, I told Dr. Rowe about it during our session. She smiled gently and said, "You don't have to rebuild what was broken. Sometimes acknowledgement is enough." I nodded, letting that truth settle. It wasn't reconciliation in the way I once imagined, but it was release. Over the next few weeks, life moved on quietly. The mentorship program gained new members, and Carla officially became my first mentee. Watching her gain confidence reminded me why I started all of this, to help women see what I spent years trying to find in myself. One afternoon, after a meeting at the community center, I checked my phone and found a photo from Dad. He and Mom were sitting on their porch smiling with the dog at their feet. The message underneath was short, "We're proud of you, always were, just too late to say it." I didn't cry. I just smiled, saved the photo, and sent back a simple heart. That was enough. Summer rolled into fall. My company grew, my friendships deepened, and the noise of old family guilt faded into the background. I learned that peace doesn't announce itself. It settles quietly, like sunlight through a clean window. One Sunday evening, I hosted another dinner at my apartment. The same group as before, Jenna Mel Madison and a few others. Carla joined, too nervous at first, but quickly laughing along. As the table filled with food and chatter, I realized this was what I'd been chasing all those years, connection without condition. Family made, not inherited. Near the end of the night, as candles burned low and the city hummed beyond the balcony, Jenna lifted her glass and said, "To Lauren for teaching us that walking away doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it's the only way to find home." Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt that warmth move through the room, the kind that doesn't come from wine or food, but from belonging. I thought about the table I once sat beside, the one that broke something in me, and realized it no longer defined who I was. After everyone left, I stood alone in the quiet kitchen. The scent of lemon and rosemary still lingered in the air. I wiped the counters, stacked the dishes, and paused for a moment, looking around the space I'd built. Every inch of it carried pieces of my journey, proof that healing isn't loud, it's steady. Before bed, I opened my green journal one last time. On the final page, beneath all the notes and fragments of the past year, I wrote, "The real victory wasn't leaving their table. It was learning to build my own and invite peace to sit with me." I closed the journal and placed it on the shelf. Then I turned off the light, the city still glowing faintly through the window. If you've ever had to choose yourself after being overlooked, I hope you know that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, "Not anymore," and that's enough to change everything. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, share it or keep it close. Either way, may it remind you that you never need permission to take your place at the table you deserve.